record this. I think it's recording, maybe. Oh, yep, there we are. Okay. You'd think we would know how to work Zoom by now. We've only spent the last year and a half on Zoom. So just some housekeeping things. We have about 120 people in our meeting here. So, feel free to put questions in the chat. We're going to do kind of a broad session first. It only takes like 15-ish minutes. It'll be kind of about all of fraternity sorority life. We know as parents and families that you all are some of our biggest partners in supporting your students. And we do a lot of sessions and education with students to make sure that they know everything available to them, including all of the Greek opportunities. So we want to make sure that you all are equipped to provide those opportunities as well. Because we always say, if you're Greek, you're Greek. You need to know about all of our communities. So we feel the same for our parents. So we'll do some broad kind of high level fraternity sorority life stuff with our team here. And then we'll kind of break up into different breakout rooms to talk about the specific recruitment and intake processes for each of our 5 Greek councils, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So we'll do some staff introductions. Again, if you have questions, feel free to drop those in the chat at any time. There's like 5 or so staff members in this call who can help answer those questions as we go. We are recording this. If anybody has to dip out a little bit early, it'll be posted to our website later this weekend. And yeah, since we've got quite a few people here, if you don't mind keeping yourself muted, that might help us manage the noise levels a little bit, but we're happy to answer questions in the chat. And then as we go to those breakout rooms, there'll be chances to unmute and chat with our staff there as well. So we're so excited to have you. So I'll kick us off with introductions, and then our staff will just kind of go in order like we have been for our in-person sessions. So my name is Kylie Frisbee. I use she, her pronouns. I'm our fraternity and sorority associate director. So I oversee our fraternity sorority life on campus. And I really love getting to work with this community. We have such a special community here at OU. And I'm excited for you to learn more about what we do, why it's important, and how you all get to partner with us as parents and families for your students. So I'm going to kick it over to Hunter next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hunter Guanera. I am one of our coordinators for fraternity and sorority programs and services. And so I serve as the advisor for our Interfraternity Council and Independent Greek Council.
You didn't kick it over, Hunter, but I will go. Hi, my name is Ariel Hobson, and I am also a coordinator in our fraternity and sorority programs and services office. And I service our NPHC and which stands for National Panhellenic Council, and our Multicultural Greek Council. And I'm going to kick it to Emily Reinhardt.
Thank you, Ari. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Reinhardt, and I am the Panhellenic advisor. We're so excited to get to talk to y'all tonight.
And hi, everyone. My name is Tui Bui. I'm the graduate assistant for our team, and I work with community programming and leadership development.
Perfect. Okay. Me already trying to answer a question in the chat and forgetting I'm supposed to talk next. Well, hey, we're really excited. So we're going to kick us off here if I can get my slides to work. So kind of just broad level, like we talked about, why fraternity and sorority life. We've done several of these in-person parent sessions the last couple of days. And a lot of the questions that come up are like, what even is fraternity sorority life? Like, what is this thing that my student is interested in joining? We know that every parent is coming to us from a different sort of life experience. So when we talk about why Greek, we know that students who are engaged on campus, who really have that community in what they do, they have stronger performances academically. So a little tidbit of information. All of us, Twee, Ariel, Hunter, Emily, and I, we all work for this office called the Office of Student Life. We do everything from cultural programs to large-scale campus events. We do all of those things because we want to help your students build community outside the classroom. Because just like you, we want your students to do well in the classroom, graduate, and get a job. Like that is our goal, to help your students thrive in and outside of the classroom on campus. And one of the ways that your students can thrive is through fraternity sorority life. So, whether it's opportunities for leadership or mentorship, siblinghood, service, and community building opportunities. Those are all really great things that the fraternity sorority experience can offer. But I think the most important one is the last thing on the slide here, is that home away from home. We know all of your students are excited to be here, but they might be feeling a little bit anxious. I remember feeling that way when I got dropped off at OU. I was like, what is going on? I need some friends. So that's why I joined my sorority. I needed some friends. So we know that that could really be something for your students as well. So we want to help them find that home away from home. A couple other things here to talk about, again, we talk about like what fraternity sorority life is. There are a couple big values that our community is about when we look at fraternity sorority life. So the things I kind of mentioned: service, scholarship, leadership, and siblinghood. Your students are going to have lots of opportunities to grow as individuals. We always talk about it as U 2.0. We want students to leave campus as a version of themselves, not necessarily a better version of themselves, but a version of themselves that they want to be. And fraternity sorority life offers a lot of these different things that can help them get there. So we're really excited to get to talk to you about that today, so that you can kind of relay this information onto your students and help weave that into your conversations with them as they are looking at fraternity sorority life. So we know it's important for you to know what's, like we said, what we're about. Just some information for you broadly here. We have 58 Greek chapters on campus right now. I think some people maybe don't know that. It's a big number. We've got 5 Greek councils, and all of my friends here on the call are going to be talking about what those councils are, so that you can listen and see which breakout session you'd like to attend. Basically, just for those who are like, what is a Greek council? It's a governing body. So if you look at it like a hierarchy, there's 5 councils, and underneath those 5 councils are 58 chapters that are just fraternities and sororities. So it's a great thing. You can see on the slide here, 31 fraternities, 27 sororities, and the Greek community makes up about 30% of the student population at OU. So it's a big number. It's about 6,500 to 6,700 students, but it is a great way for your students to make connections, and we're really excited to tell you more about our community. So Hunter's going to kick us off talking about the IFC first.
Yeah, so like I said, my name's Hunter, and I work with both of our councils that start with I, so I get to go first when we're talking about them. The first thing we have is the Interfraternity Council. The Interfraternity Council has been at OU for a while. It was founded in 1905, so it is older than the state itself. So these organizations have been here for a very long time, one of our oldest student groups. But it's comprised of actually 17 fraternities now. We have 16 on there, but we've got a new one joining us next week, which is really exciting. So these are big organizations. They're social in nature. It's about people doing life together. And so we've got about 150 members per organization. That fluctuates kind of between 120 and 150 each year, just kind of depending on who's studying abroad and who's joining that year, and all the different things. But I'm just going to go real high level some of this information. So if we look at our average IFC GPA, I pick 3.25 kind of arbitrarily as that number that I want us to get close to. And so having that 3.2 is really exciting us, and they worked really hard for this past semester. And so if you know anything about college, that's actually a really impressive GPA, especially for a collection of over 2,200 students. As we continue to look at IFC, a lot of our organizations have these large houses. So if you were just here for move-in and you got a chance to see just west of campus, you probably saw quite a few of them. So that kind of goes into explain kind of this cost range. As we get a little bit later on, we're going to see some numbers when it comes to money. We like to give a feel for what the first year of membership is going to cost right here, but we will dive in a little bit more into that later on, and that's posted on our website. So we have a lot of information there. The last thing to kind of hit on what I'm going to go a little more in depth on in my breakout session is going to be about formal recruitment. The recruitment process is happening next week for IFC. So if you want to learn more about that, please come on over to the breakout session here in a little bit, and I will gladly go in depth and answer all of your questions. But from here, we're going to move on to the Independent Greek Council also. So IGC, as we call them, is actually unique to OU. So when we look at these organizations, a lot of them have governing bodies. So our councils have governing bodies at the national level. So Panhellenic has NPC, MPHC has NPHC, and IFC even has the NIC. The Independent Greek Council does not have that. That's why we call it the Independent Greek Council. They are organizations that were working kind of outside of the realm of these governing bodies at the national level. So we've brought them all together. We've built a great community here. Sorry about that audio. I'm going to hold my microphone a little closer. Hopefully that's helping. But these organizations have been doing great work. We just brought them all together in 2015 and created this council that they've done really, really great things with. This is our special interest council. So when we look at organizations that may be based on STEM interest or music or even religion, they're going to live within the Independent Creek Council. We do have some organizations as well that we consider cultural celebration groups. So it's tough to say that they are special interest because that is identity based, but in general, IGC is our special interest organizations. If you want to learn more about IGC, come on over to my breakout session. Also, we're going to start with a quick piece about IGC and then dive into IFC from there, kind of depending on what the level of interest is like. But with that, I'm going to hand it on over to Ariel to talk more about our Multicultural Creek Council and National Panhellenic Council.
Thank you, Hunter. So again, you guys, my name is Ariel Hobson, and our Multicultural Greek Council is for our cultural celebration groups. So within this council, there are about 14 different chapters that your students can choose from. These chapters are very tight-knit groups of individuals. Our average chapter size has about 28 members. So that just lets you know that everybody within these organizations will know each other. And while these orgs are founded based on their cultural identities, you do not have to be Latinx, Asian American, or Indigenous Native American to join these organizations. They are truly multicultural in nature, which means that they want everybody. You will notice that our costs are a little bit different from what you will see in some of the other councils like IFC and Panhellenic, and that is because our chapter or our council is unhoused. So all the chapters that you see within the MGC, Multicultural Greek Council, do not have a house, but that's fine because they host tons of social and academic ways for them to get connected and get involved with each other. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, interest in MGC, our lovely friend Twee is going to be leading that breakout session. So feel free to ask her. She is a pro. She was a chapter president and a member of this council. And we also have our website down at the bottom. And then we're going to move into our National Panhellenic Council. So our National Panhellenic Council is where our historically Black Greek fraternities and sororities reside. You may have also heard them referred to as the Divine Nine. There are 9 chapters within this council. 6 of them are currently active. Again, like we saw with MGC, these chapters are smaller in nature, which again makes them very tight-knit groups. If you're wondering how to join one of these organizations, it is completely based on the individual orgs themselves, and we will go into all of that in my lovely breakout session. And if you have any questions or concerns, our website is also at the bottom there, and I can't wait to chat with you. And now I'm going to pass it off to my beautiful friend, Emily.
Thanks, friend. Okay, so I just want to clarify, this is what, day 5 as me as serving as the Panhellenic advisor. So if y'all are like, why is there 2? Kylie has been, working with Panhellenic for the last couple of years, but has been, our associate director, and it's awesome. But this is day 5 for me, but I've been here for y'all. Been around OU with a little bit for a while, but yeah, let's see, let's go back to the Panhellenic Association. All right, so talk a little bit about this, kind of similar to IFC and just, you're good, Kylie. So very similar to IFC, they're social-based organizations, kind of also like IFC, they're also big organizations. We have 11 organizations in the Panhellenic Association here at the University of Oklahoma. Average chapter size, that's even gone up a little bit, it's 300 members. GPA 3.5, we got very, very smart organization members. That's awesome. Average cost range, we will go into that a little bit deeper once we get to our financial breakdown, which you kind of saw a little glimpse of a second there. Don't freak out, we'll get to it. And it's fine, Kylie. It's all good, but all of our organizations are housed. We do have a couple that are doing some renovations right now, little facelifts here and there. So that is to expect about the Panhellenic Association. Again, like my colleagues have said, we'll go into a deeper explanation about this council and then their recruitment process in our breakout session.
And then next, I'm going to go into a little bit about our fraternity and sorority experiences. So across the board, regardless of what council a student wants to join, there are a few commitments that they're expected to keep. So first up is the financials commitment. So that can look like house dues, new member dues, or if they live in the sorority or fraternity houses, that can look like rent, lease, or apparel for their letters. And then next we'll show a breakdown of the dues, but do keep in mind there's a large discrepancy between councils because some councils do have houses that members are expected to pay rent, and that includes laundry, food services, electronic services, all sorts of things included in the amenities with the housing fees. There we go. And then the second year is usually when members select to live in the houses. So that's why their dues are a little higher during that second year as opposed to the first or the other years. And there's also a time commitment that can look like study hours, chapter meetings, new member meetings, social events like brotherhood, sisterhood, mixers, date parties, date dashes, leadership events, president's retreat, recruitment, or just alumni events to bond with the members who have already come in before them. And of course, our whole community is about building relationships and connections. So the social commitment for them to meet other members within their house, within their council, so that they can network and build their relationship so that they have a home here at OU.
Nice. Okay, so I'm going to wrap us up here before we jump to our breakout rooms. So the last kind of piece that feels really similar from council to council is this new member, the idea of a new member experience. So like any organization, when you join, you might not know totally everything that's going on, and that's totally fine. That's what the new member period is for. But within fraternity and sorority life, the new member period is really filled with these big things listed here. So mentorship opportunities. There will be lots of chances for your students to build community, make some friends, and kind of, join together with the organization. So that's a lot of fun. That comes with integration into the organization, learning about what your organization was founded for, why it was founded, why that's important. And then the last one here that I think is really important for parents to kind of think about as we talk about a new member experience is that new schedule to adjust to. So there's going to be times your student's going to call you and they're going to be stressed out because, these organizations, like Twee mentioned, come with the time commitment, they come with that social aspect, and it's just like new things to adjust to. That doesn't mean it's bad. But sometimes your students are going to call you and they're going to be a little bit stressed. So, thinking about our language and how we help them work through that new adjustment is really important. So maybe that's sitting down and figuring out like, hey, what's our priority list? What do we need to work on? If we've never had to do that in high school before, maybe this is the time to learn it. It's a great life skill. So fraternities and sororities offer those things, even if it doesn't seem right at the surface that they're offering those things. If you ask anybody who was in a fraternity and sorority, they're going to be like, oh, I actually learned like a lot of life lessons in my Greek experience. So we definitely love that. There's a full strobe light happening above me. I don't know if you guys can see this. I feel like I need to turn that light off, but anyway, little glimpse behind the camera here. Oh, if you can see Emily on your screen, I'm up in that room above her. We're very professional here. Apologies. So this is a fun transition. Talking about hazing. So we're talking about the new member experience, and I think we would be remiss not to mention our hazing policy. We talk about this with our student leaders. We talk about this with our students joining the community. But, our organizations, all of them are founded to be non-hazing organizations. We know that historically fraternity sorority life has struggled in this area. And, we're not naive as staff members. Like, we know this stuff happens. So we find it really important to educate on why hazing is not helpful, why it doesn't build brother and sisterhood the way that students might think it does, and some better ways that we can do those things. So we like to talk about this hazing policy. I feel like the staff is laughing at my strobe light behind me right now. But we like to talk about the hazing policy here. I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, but the big things to note. One, hazing is against the university code of conduct. Two, it's against the law in the state of Oklahoma. So that's a real plus. And three, if anything concerning comes up during your student's new member experience, let us know. I hope one of the things you gain from this session is just how many staff members are here on your team. We talk about this a lot with our students, that there's never another time in their life that so many people are on their team wanting them to succeed. And that's what we do. We live to help students support. We live to support students. We live to help them and make them have a great college experience. So there's a lot of people here that can help. So if there is something concerning that comes up during your student's new member experience, no matter what council they join, please reach out. We are happy to talk you through that, report that case, do that investigation, whatever that looks like. Our team is happy to help there. So here's some kind of last thing. If you're into the Instagram, maybe that's more of a student thing, but hey, we got a lot of parents on Instagram these days. So if you're interested in that, feel free to scan that QR code. But we are going to do some breakouts into sessions here. And I'm going to move because I'm getting blinded by this strobe light. It is truly something else. So if you are interested in the breakout rooms, I am going to go ahead, see if I can remember how to do this. I'm going to go ahead and open these breakout rooms up. Oh, not that. Here, I'm just going to stop sharing the screen real quick so I can get organized. So if anybody has never done a breakout room, this is your moment. So I'm going to open these rooms up. Like Hunter mentioned, IFC and IGC are going to be in the same room. So if you're interested in the Interfraternity Council or the Independent Greek Council, you're going to hop in that room. I'm going to open these up. The Multicultural Greek Council will be with Twee, and then the National Panhellenic Council would be with Ariel. And everybody else is going to stay, everybody else interested in Panhellenic is going to stay in this main room here. Historically speaking, well, more so historically as in the last 3 days, when we've done our in-person sessions, it's been largely Panhellenic. So we wanted to not move the most amount of people possible. So this is crazy. This light is crazy. I'm going to see what this looks like if I just turn this off.
You're fine, Kylie. I'm laughing at our lovely students who are in a window in front of me, y'all, and they are clowning. So I apologize.
We love it. We love it. Okay, I hope I don't look like I'm in the dark. Oh no, this is great. Okay. So yeah, go ahead and head to your breakout sessions. If anybody is having problems moving, put in the chat, or actually this is a good time you can unmute if you'd like, and we can help get you to the right place. So just if you guys want to jump to your rooms, I think I can handle the breakout stuff here, Emily and I, between the two of us, we can figure it out. Yeah, so I feel like I wish you all could see. I am actually right above Emily. So great. It's very dark up here. I cannot see what's going on. Okay, so we will get started in just a moment. Does anybody need help moving to another room? Oh my God, the strobe light, y'all, it's so bad. Everybody's good. Maybe Ariel just needs some help moving to her breakout room.
How do I jump, Kylie?
You just jump up and down. Just kidding. I can assign you to your room.
Thank you. I'm technologically challenged.
It's hard. Honestly, breakout rooms are so hard, I think. Stay here for sorority. Yes. So this session, you don't need to move at all if you're interested in Panhellenic sororities. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, if anybody else has issues, feel free to chime in the chat. We are, how do I move to IFC? I've got you, Kristen. Let me find you on our list here. Actually, while we're moving some people around, I'm going to play a short little video. It's like we planned this. This video is, so in our in-person sessions, we've been doing, like our vendors have come to set up tables. And so kind of to try to give a somewhat similar experience, we filmed a little video. There's some background noise, so I apologize. Our sweet students filmed this video. But they filmed this little video for you guys to see our vendors. So I'm going to play that while we're getting people moved to their thing. It's like 2 minutes long or something. So we'll let that go. I'm hoping people can hear this. Someone's got to give me a thumbs up.
Hi, I'm Devon at Ely's Flowers. We have lots of flowers available. We do fresh week flowers, and we also have midday flowers. We have the list, so you can order anytime for midday. We also have balloons. We have add-on gifts like flame flowers. You can give us a call or you can go on our website. Thanks.
Hi, we are Caymans, and we are located in Carriage Plaza on Main Street. We carry all these amazing items and more. Just text or call us 405-360-3969. Visit our Instagram, Shop Caymans, or our website, shop-caymans.com.
Hi, my name is Carla, and I am at the Apothecary on Campus Corner. We are located just north of campus. We have good day and midweek gifts that you can order for your daughters, nieces, friends. 2345. Our website is theapothecary.com, and you can also find us on Instagram, The Apothecary, and Facebook, The Apothecary.
Hi, I'm Jenny Everett with Great Necessities. We have partnered with OU Panhellenic this year, and we're super excited to offer a midday gift. Go online to our website, greatnecessities.com. You can place your order for your midday gift, and we will deliver it to your daughter at their sorority house. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy from Christmas Expressions. We're located at 2214 West Lindsay in Norman. We've been serving the Greek community for 42 years, and we look forward to meeting you and serving your daughter also. Our phone number is 405-360-5211. Give us a call and we'll take care of you. Thank you.
Hi, we're with Occasions, Main Street in Norman and Carriage Plaza, and we have midday gifts and midweek gifts, so you can just call us at 405-217-8467 or go online on our website. You can order either way. It's occasionspaper.com.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was trying to help answer a question in the chat. Okay, so thanks for watching our video of our sweet vendors. We love them. But they're, for everybody in this session that is interested in Panhellenic and learning more, they are a really great resource if you're looking to help your student, maybe, give them a little gift, little pick me up during the week. Those are some great vendors to look at. So I can drop a link in the chat later of all of our vendors who, links to their website, all that kind of stuff. But we appreciate you all joining us for that piece. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. I feel like a person that knows what they're doing right now. Wow. And I'm going to drop it over to my friend Emily. She's going to kind of kick us off, tell us a little bit about Panhellenic. And then we're going to learn a lot about the recruitment process, and there's going to be a ton of time for questions. So this session is really for anyone interested in learning more about the Panhellenic recruitment process. We are so happy to help. I want to preface, there's no dumb questions in this session. We know some people are starting from like square zero or -1. So do not feel bad if you have questions. So Emily, take us away.
All right, everyone. So we will go pretty quickly through these first couple slides because it gets a little bit more stretched out once we go through the recruitment process, and Kylie goes into some great specifics about how everything goes down. Oh yeah, we love the horns down, always. Okay, so our Panhellenic community, like I mentioned, there's 11 organizations here at the University of Oklahoma, over, around 3,200 members. So again, a very big organization. Each of our organizations are very large, but as a Panhellenic community wide, 3,200 members. So it's great to see. If your student is used to big groups or not used to big groups, like sometimes it's an adjustment. So we're definitely here with them, and we're ready to make that adjustment with them. Okay, so community values, we already talked about these previously, and these it shows that we mirror our community values with the other councils of the fraternity and sorority programs experience. So leadership. When we've been doing these presentations in person, we've been having 2 leaders from the community. They are leaders in their own chapter. So, it's an example right there that there's opportunity for your student to lead in their organization as well as outside of their organization. We are not the only student organization here at the University of Oklahoma. We literally work in the office that houses a lot of them. So definitely some development, opportunities to develop yourself as a leader in Panhellenic and Greek life, and then beyond. Service. Every organization has a philanthropy, and they put on about 2 events per year for their philanthropy, to raise money for their philanthropies. Sometimes they have more than one. But our philanthropy as a whole is United Way of Norman. We'll do events ourselves and raise money for the United Way. Sisterhood, it's kind of obvious one, but we love to throw that in. You're here, you're creating memories, you're creating bonds with other members of your organization. They're going to be lifelong. I have 2 matrons of honors, and I met both of them as a G5. That was me here at the University of Oklahoma. I was a G5, Gamma Phi Beta. But last one, scholarship. That is the first thing. That's why we're here. We're here to get a degree. We're here to further and educate your student and get them prepared for life after college, because that's super important. So promoting academic success and providing academic support system. They have definitely different avenues in their organization to find a buddy to help them study hours, a lot of academic resources in the chapter, and then as well as on campus as well. All right, a little bit by the numbers. Again, there's that wonderful GPA. We're going to keep that exactly like that and build it up. Over 1,100 leadership positions held on campus in 2020. So just like I was saying, we have a lot of leaders in our community, both in and out of the Panhellenic Council. So over $500,000 raised. They do a lot. 80,000 community service hours completed in 2020. Like something Kylie mentioned, they each are giving to the communities, both locally, nationally. So they have a lot of community service hours that they'll give back to Norman or, the greater area. Okay, so now we kind of step a little bit further into what your role will kind of look like, what we suggest your role to kind of look like during the Panhellenic recruitment process. So sounding board, sometimes students just need to talk and they just need a vent, and you understand that about your student because it's your child. So just being there for them and being able to hear what their frustrations are happening. You're going through a big step. They just got dropped off for college. They're going through recruitment. They just got camp and they're starting college. Big stuff. So just hearing them out is very big. being that support system, being that celebrator, that consoler. Sometimes, it's a long process and it can be very draining. Your child is outside in the heat and the Oklahoma heat, and they get tired, they're emotional. Sometimes there's tears, and that's okay. We'll take tears or no tears, but just kind of being there for them if they just need to let it out and saying, all right, what can we do now to have a clear conscience and to move forward in this next step, because we're going to get through this, friend. Partners and friends, if you ever very concerned about your child, you just need to give us a call, shoot some questions to us. We will have our phone number to the Panhellenic office, and you can give us a call throughout this entire process and then after as well. We're here to not only, hope that your child has a great Greek experience, but, we're here to set them up for their future. So if this is their thing, if this is not their thing, you can always come to us, and we would love to help navigate what their OU experience would look like. Okay, supporting your students just a little bit further with tips and tricks. Listen to their frustrations. This process can be scary and confusing, and they may not want any action, but just someone to listen to. We talked about that. Understand this is your student's experience. Sometimes they're going to be really wanting to say, like, okay, what do you do? Like, what should I do? Who should I pick? Who should I eliminate from my schedule? And that, you say, well, I don't know. That's exactly what my mom said. I'm the first in my family to go Greek. She's like, I don't know what this process is like. And I didn't talk to the women in these organizations. This is a time for you to make a big decision. This may be their first time they are making a big decision on their own. So really supporting them in that process and saying, you know what it is, trust your gut, and you'll have a great experience no matter what. If things don't go right, it's also very, very important to remind your student that this is not the end all be all experience at the University of Oklahoma. We will figure something out. So putting that into perspective is also a really big thing. But it's their first big college thing that they're doing here. So sometimes it's like, this is the end all be all. So keeping that perspective is very important and helpful for them. They're like, oh yeah, this is like week 1 of college. So be intentional in your conversations with your student. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, and now I'm going to pass it back to Kylie. She's going to get a little bit more, way more technical with how the recruitment process is going to go down. She's great. Here we go.
Cool. Okay, so I am always really bad about remembering to look at the chat when meetings like this happen. So Emily might have to have my back in this one. So we're going to talk a lot about formal recruitment, answer any questions you have. This is what this space is for. So again, there are no dumb questions. We know that not everybody knows like literally anything. I was telling the group the other day that we had a parent session a couple years ago, and we had done this whole training, and then this sweet dad came up and he was like, so what is around? Like, what are we talking about? Like, that is a great point. Not everybody even knows what that means. So we're going to start with the very basics and then kind of talk about how the process works, what the numbers piece looks like, and make sure that you feel comfortable going into this week. Because your student's going to get a lot of the same information from her recruitment guides. They're called ROGAMAs. They're just upperclassmen who help walk your student through the process. She's going to get a lot of information from those students, but we want to make sure you know as well. So at OU, our recruitment process is broken up into 4 rounds. Those are just, what they sound like. They're just the different sides of recruitment that your student's going to go through. Each round has a theme, and that's where we get the chance to, connect your student with the awesome chapters on our campus. So our first round, we're going to start from the beginning. Our first round, every student will go to all 11 chapters. On our campus, we have 11 Panhellenic organizations, and your student will go to all 11 over 2 days. So they'll go to 6 the first, 5 the next, or vice versa. And those rounds are super short. They're like 25 minutes. It's really kind of surface level conversation. We always suggest students have some kind of elevator sort of pitch ready. So if they're not ready to like talk about themselves, they might kind of start gathering those thoughts, feel good about going into round 1. But round 1 is, again, 11 chapters over 2 days. And it's 25 minutes long. So again, the door opens, 25 minutes starts, the door closes. So they filter everybody in and everybody out. You might be thinking, like, what does that mean? When we say they go to 11 chapters, each event is called a party. Now you might be thinking, oh my gosh, a party, like a party. It's not a real party like that. It's, it's just called a party. So it's just, honestly, at the end of the day, recruitment is just talking to people. I think people get really freaked out about formal recruitment. At the end of the day, it's just having conversations with other students. That is all recruitment is. So if your student is like nervous about it or feeling some type of way, you might just remind them, hey, recruitment is just having a conversation with someone who could be your best friend one day. That's all it is. So they would go to 11 parties. Now, another thing to mention on round one specifically, between the 2 days, the chapters are recruiting a total of 20 parties, and your student will go to 11 of those 20. So you'll notice that there's lots of time for breaks in there. Your student won't be going hard like all day long. They'll have breaks built in. So we're not gonna put them in the Oklahoma heat and not give them some time to rest. So they will be just fine. So then after the first round, we do selections, and your students will download a handy dandy app. It's called the PNM Companion app, and they'll make their selections. And we're going to talk about what selections look like on the next slide and how that works. So your students will make selections, and then they go into the second round, which is focused on philanthropy. Philanthropy round has a maximum of 8 parties that day. I think there's like 12 that the chapters are doing. So again, your student's going to have some breaks. And we say a maximum of 8 because not every student is going to have 8 parties, right? Like it is not a big deal to not have 8 parties. Emily and I found out yesterday that we both had 5 on 8 party day. I didn't know that Emily also had 5. So it's not like if you don't have 8, you're not going to end up in a chapter. At the end of the day, you can't join 11 chapters. So it's totally fine to not have 8 organizations or 5 on the third round, that kind of thing. So round 2 parties are 35 minutes long. They do the same thing. They go to those parties, they walk in, someone picks them up at the door that's in the chapter. They talk to them, they bid them adieu, and then your student will go to their next event. And it's just that. It's really, really not as complicated as it might sound. The biggest difference between round 1 and the other rounds is that round 1, we break our group up into the alphabet. So your student will be around people who have similar last name. And the groups are about 60-ish students per group, and they walk into the chapter, they, get to meet students. The rounds after that, because they're invitational rounds after that, your student will have a really individualized schedule. So her recruitment guides, those row gammas that I talked about earlier, this picture on the slide here, those are the row gammas from a couple of years ago. They are a fun group. The row gammas are the ones who bring your students' party schedule for the day to their residence hall room. Or if your student lives off campus, they will text them a picture of that in the morning to make sure that they know where they're going, they feel confident about it, and then they can go on their way and have a great day. So that's the second round, 35-minute parties. Round 3, very similar, maximum of 5 parties. The parties are 45 minutes long, so the days get a little bit longer as we go to less chapters. A max of 5 that day. And the parties are very much focused on sisterhood. They're focused on like a house tour. They do a house tour that day. So when people ask for advice for Sisterhood Day, I say, hey, wear some shoes that you can climb stairs in. Don't wear some heels that you're going to be looking like a baby deer walking around in heels. We don't want that. So make sure we wear some comfy shoes that day. And then lastly, we go into preference round. You might have heard this called pref before. Preference round is a max of 2 chapters. The parties are an hour and 5 minutes long. Very specific number there. I don't know why we didn't just make it an hour. I will never, little things we just don't know. It's fine. Anyway, but yeah, so between all of these events on every round, there are 15 minutes between parties. So there's plenty of time to get from chapter to chapter. And if you're a little bit worried about your student, like not knowing where to go, like we said, the recruitment guide will deliver that schedule to your student in the morning, and it'll say what chapter, what time they're supposed to be there. There's a map on that same piece of paper every day. But we also have recruitment guides that are stationed around. So they like sit on the street corner all day long. They know when they get picked to be a row gamma, most people go invest in a really nice lawn chair, and they will hang out outside all day and tell your student where to go. If they're running late, they'll be like, hey, you better hustle to get to whatever chapter. So they're there to help them throughout that day. And then recruitment ends with bid day. So on our campus, bid day happens in the afternoon/evening. So our bids go out at 4:00 p.m. And parents are definitely welcome to join. That's always a question we get, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you all are definitely able to join on bid day if you would like. It's definitely a fun day. And yeah, so that's kind of like the very high level basics of the structure of recruitment. The only acronym we have on here is PNM, is a potential new member. That's just your student. At OU, it feels like we live in alphabet soup. There's an acronym for literally everything. And Panhellenic is no different. So on any campus, someone that's going through the recruitment process is called a PNM, or a potential new member. So if you've ever heard that before and you're like, what is that? That's what that is. So I guess I can talk a little bit about bid day here before we move on. Like I mentioned, bid day, the bids will go out at 4:00 p.m. and there's a lot of different scenarios of what can happen the night before bid day, which we're going to talk about that. But yeah, so students have the whole morning off to get ready for classes the next day, get some rest, take care of themselves. A lot of times if we see parents and families that live close, my family lives like a, hour 15-ish from Norman. And so on bid day, they came and took me out to lunch because I hadn't seen them in about a week. And, I just moved away from home. So I remember them coming to take me to lunch, and that was really nice. So sometimes parents will do that on bid day. If there's any last minute things your student maybe forgot, you can drop them off. But bid day, the students get the bids on their hall floor. So the recruitment guides will bring the bids to them. If your student lives off campus or doesn't live in the residence halls, they will come to this building that Emily and I are in right now with the strobe light. It's called the Jim Thorpe Multicultural Center. And this building, we've got our address and stuff online, but we'll cover that later. That's where any students that live off campus, that's where they're going to meet throughout the week for their small group meetings. So they'll know exactly where to come. And they will open their bids with their recruitment guide groups. And it is the craziest thing you've ever seen. It's like mass exodus. People run to the houses. So it's a fun time. We don't necessarily post the bid list around, especially online. But a lot of times students will get that list. We give them their t-shirt, their new chapter t-shirt with their list, and they'll put that t-shirt on and head over to the house. So you're welcome to meet them downstairs in their residence hall, or meet them at the chapter facility. A lot of our chapters will have a little parent meeting. It's like nothing crazy, mostly just getting signed up for emails or whatever. They'll do that kind of stuff on bid day. But if you're not able to join, please don't lose sleep over it. We know that a large chunk of our student population comes from Oklahoma and Texas. So for a lot of students, their parents are somewhat close. I mean, Texas is huge. So just because you're from Texas doesn't necessarily mean you're able to just be here on Sunday for bid day. But if you are wanting to come, it's definitely a thing that's done. We see lots of parents on bid day. Sometimes the Greek housing area looks a bit like game day. If you've ever seen a college game day in Norman, it's a fun time. So that's kind of what bid day looks like. I'm trying to see in the chat here if there's anything. Emily, is there anything we need to answer out loud that we missed maybe in the chat? I see you're answering questions.
Yeah, so there was one for bid day, just because Kylie kind of mentioned, it's kind of in the greatest word, chaotic, because there's no way to film or video or anything like that. So definitely be checking social medias. That's a huge thing in Panhellenic now. They're utilizing these social media platforms to post and tell you this is who we are. So I can guarantee there'll be some pictures posted from that day. But beyond that, there's a lot of technical questions that we'll definitely get to in the next couple of slides. A lot of this stuff will start to make sense, and I will try to answer your questions as much as possible.
Cool. But yeah, bid day is the 22nd. It's the day before classes begin on that Sunday. Question here about philanthropy day. Are they reviewing each chapter's philanthropy focus? They are. They're learning about what each chapter's philanthropic works are. So whether it's service, what their national philanthropy is, those are some things that the students will talk about during that round. So I think sometimes people get nervous about like, I have to hold a conversation with a stranger for 35 minutes. Like that's not just like small talk, right? That's like kind of a lot. I get nervous about that. I'm like, oof, that's a lot. But so it kind of helps that each day has a focus, and, you know, your students can help come up with some questions maybe, as they go into these chapters. So, you know, maybe service is really important to your student. So she can have some questions ready about, you know, what kind of service do you do? Like, how do you build sisterhood through service? What are some ways that I could get involved with your philanthropy? Those are some great questions that she could ask on that philanthropy round. And yeah, that question in the chat from Autumn about, so this is how the ladies help narrow their choices based on what the chapter focuses on. For some people, that really does help them. I think everybody's kind of got their own decision-making process, and I don't know, we talk a lot about how people join people. So I think if you ask anybody in a Panhellenic chapter, I mean, anywhere, but specifically at OU, they'll probably tell you, I joined because I met this person. Like, I loved my organization's mission, live with purpose. I thought that was awesome. I love, you know, purpose and the why and all that. But like, I joined because I met this girl named Lauren, and she was great. And she ended up being we call them sis mom, like a sister mother. And I loved her. She was awesome. And she's still one of my great friends. So it just kind of depends on each student. But some advice I would give you, if your student's struggling during recruitment, you might tell her to work backwards. So think about, like, ask her to think about, what is she looking for out of an organization? If she pictures herself in like the perfect scenario, what is it? Like, not the chapter. What is that experience look like? Is it the philanthropy she's working with? Is it the people? Is it the events that they're going to do? You know, whatever that looks like, tell her to think backwards. And then maybe she can help find a group that fits those things. So that's good advice for her if she's struggling, and her recruitment guides will probably ask some of the same questions, like those probing questions, to get her there on her own. So, okay, we're going to jump to the next slide, because I think this might help answer some of these questions in the chat. So we've talked about the different rounds of recruitment. There are two ways that we make selections. The first is on this slide. It's rounds 1 through 3. So if you're looking at this slide and you're like, oh my God, that's a lot, we're going to talk through it, no stress. So again, this is rounds 1 through 3 of recruitment. So like I mentioned, each round, your student will go to the chapters that they go to, and then they will make their selections each night on that app. And this is kind of what their selection screen will look like. So they'll see what's on the left. So this screen is a good example of a selections of someone who had a full party schedule on round 2. So again, round 2 is a max of 8 chapters, right? So we're looking at this, say this is my party schedule for round 2, even though, like I said, I had 5 chapters, not 8. So say I went to 8 chapters on round 2, this is what my screen would look like. Because the next round, round 3, is a max of 5, I would try to match with 5 chapters, the maximum. So I'm going to move my favorite 5 chapters up above that line. I'm going to say, these are the chapters I loved. I met some really awesome people. I want to go back there. And then I'm going to rank the bottom 3. So those top 5, the ranking doesn't matter. The students will still rank them because they think it matters. It really doesn't matter. We'll tell them that a million times, but it's okay. To each their own. So the system reads the top 5 all as 1. So those are their favorite chapters that they most want to go back to the next day. Those bottom 3 below the line are ranked. So number 6 there, that's a chapter they would most like to go back to if one of their top 5 doesn't invite them back. And the same thing, number 7 is the second one they would most like to go back to. Sorry, I'm going to find who's unmuted here. I'm going to mute you, little friend. Sorry. So again, we'll kind of walk through this. So we see here, chapter 1, your student loved, I love chapter 1. I want to go back to chapter 1. You see the check mark. Chapter 1 invited me back. I'll be back at chapter 1 for round 3. Same thing with chapter 2. It's a match. That's great stuff. Now, chapter 3 didn't invite me back. They were on my preference list, but I was not on chapter 3's invitation list for the next round of recruitment. So that's not a match. So I will not be back at round 3. But the system is always going to try to help your student maximize their options. So you're going to hear that a lot during recruitment, maximize your options. So we see chapter 6 here. That's the chapter that your student would most like to go back to if they were not invited back by one of their top chapters. So chapter 6 is going to move back up to your student's schedule. They will be back at chapter 6 for the next round in order to fill their schedule. So the example I always give for something like this is my own recruitment experience. I went to OU for, like Emily, got 2 degrees from here, Sooner through and through, love this place. But I, like everybody, I went to 11 chapters on the first round of recruitment. And when it was time to make my selections for 8 party day, I said, okay, these are the 8 chapters that I most want to go back to. And the other 3, I said, met some cool people, not my jam. The chapter I ranked as number 11, all the way at the bottom, was the chapter I ended up in on bid day. So not enough chapters invited me back for that second round, but all the way down at the bottom of my list did invite me back. So that I ended back up at that chapter on the next day and met that girl, Lauren, that I was talking about. So it's always like those serendipitous experiences. I think students get really frustrated. They're like, I said I didn't want to go back there, but they met one person. Emily talked about the chapter sizes being on average 300 people. If they met one person out of those 300 people, maybe they just didn't meet the right person, right? So I think those are some perspective pieces you can always give your student if they're feeling frustrated or, upset about that. That's maybe a little bit of perspective. I want to make sure we have some time for questions because I know this is a little bit confusing. So yes, I got a DM. Did I say that the computer reads everyone above the line as a 1? Yes. Some other questions here from Trish. This is a great question. Do the chapters know if you are not on their top list? They don't. The chapters don't know what your student ranked them. And the students they kind of know if the chapter didn't rank them, because if a chapter, didn't invite you back, then you're not back there the next day, obviously. So they kind of know from the chapter side. But the chapters will never know the student's rankings unless the student tells them, which that's not super done. So I would never tell your student, that's some advice. Don't tell your student to say that. They don't need to necessarily tell the chapter or anybody what they ranked. That's nobody's business but your students. So the only people who are going to know what your student made preference wise is Emily and myself, because we're the staff advisors that oversee the process, and their recruitment guides, if they so tell them. The recruitment guides won't know unless your student tells them. So another question here, Christy. Oh, I see Emily answered that. Do they really only speak to one person per party? Kind of depends. Some chapters have you talk to like 1 or 2 people, and some it could be like 4 or 5 over the course of those 35 minutes. It just kind of depends. On the first round, we typically see 1 to 2 people in the chapter. So just kind of depends on the organization. But chapters, just like your student, they want to get to know your student. So they're going to ask as many people as they can to talk to your student to get a better feel. Are there any other questions about how this functions before we move to preferences for the next round? Cool. Okay. So like we mentioned on the slide here, this is preferences for rounds 1 through 3. When we get to round 4, pref night, it works very differently. So pref night, we do this thing at the end of recruitment called bid matching. And this is how we decide like who gets to join what organizations, which is super fun. So bid matching can be really intense. It can feel really intense. There's a lot of slides here that go through all these different scenarios, but I think it's really important. We do the same thing with your students. It's really important to explain like all the different scenarios so that you can help guide them if they call you in tears or in excitement about what they should do that night. So we're going to kind of walk through this together. So what we're looking at here, I know this slide is not very pretty, but it's okay. It's informative. That's what matters. So what you're looking at here is 2 chapter bid lists, alpha and beta. On the previous rounds of recruitment, the chapters are not submitting any kind of ranked list. It's just an invitation list of who they want back at their chapter on the next day. On preference round, when we do bid matching, they're submitting a ranked list, 1 through whatever, however many people are at their chapter that evening. For most chapters, it's like 170 to 200 people over those events that night. So on here, this is really just like a visual aid. So these lists don't even go all the way down. So there'll be some names that you're like, wait, why aren't they on that list? We didn't number it all the way down. So we're looking at 2 chapters here, like I said, alpha and beta. So the first student, Visha, we see that Visha is ranked number 1 on both chapters lists. Visha is obviously awesome. These chapters love Visha, but we talk about a mutual selection process. This process is mutual selection. So that means the chapter and the P&M get a say. So Visha, even though she's ranked number 1 on both lists, she's going to end up in alpha chapter because that's what she preferenced, alpha. Now, the caveat here is that it doesn't actually matter that she's ranked number 1. It just matters that she's above that yellow line. So if you're like, what is that? What is that yellow line? The yellow line is the quota line. On preference round, when we do bid matching, your students are going to come to the same building that we're all sitting in. They're actually going to be in the room that Emily is sitting in right now. They come and sign this form that's called an MRABA. It's the longest acronym ever. We say MRABA because it sounds more fun. But the MRABA is the acronym stands for Membership, Recruitment, Acceptance, Binding Agreement. And that is just their preference. It's a long way to say it's their preference for what chapter they want to be in. So they come to Jim Thorpe Center, they sign their MRABA, and they're doing what you can see here under Visha's name. They're preferencing first and second the organization they most want to be a part of. Now we're going to go through some examples later that show that not every student is going to have 2 parties. Like we talked about, it's not bad to not have 2. We just know exactly where your student's going to end up. So that's kind of exciting. So whenever your students come to sign their MRABA, you might be thinking, how do we set quota? How do we determine like arbitrarily where that line goes? We take every MRABA that's signed, we total them up. So right now we have 1,112 people signed up for formal recruitment. At the end of the recruitment process, it doesn't really matter how many people signed up. At the end of the recruitment process, we take the total number of MRABA signed and we divide it by 11, right? Because there's 11 chapters on campus. And that's how we set quota. So sometimes people get really nervous. They're like, oh my gosh, there's so many people signed up for recruitment. It doesn't super matter how many people are signed up because it's not like it doesn't mean that there's less spots. It just means the pledge classes are going to be bigger, if that makes sense. So we'll kind of go through some examples here. So like I said, it doesn't really matter that Visha is listed as number 1 on both of these chapters lists. What matters is that she's above the quota line because that's how a student matches with a chapter. So Visha prefed alpha. She's going to end up in alpha because she's above the quota line. The next example is Naomi. Oh, that's kind of blurry. Sorry about that. The next example is Naomi. So kind of like Visha, Naomi's above the quota line on both chapters, right? So because she preferenced beta, she's going to end up in beta. The other thing I want to mention here is, and this is more of a visual aid because the computer system reads this all at once. So it's a little bit harder for our brains to do that. But you'll notice that the quota line moved down on beta. That's because Visha matched with alpha. So she gets taken off of beta's list and the quota line moves down to account for her moving off that list. So Naomi prefed beta. She's above the quota line. She's going to match with beta. That one's pretty easy. Kylie's a little bit different. So Kylie is above the quota line on alpha, but below on beta. So Kylie went to 2 chapters on pref night. She preferenced both, which means that she maximized her options. Again, we're going to say that a lot, maximize your options. Kylie maximized her options. So she is guaranteed a bid. On pref night, if you maximize your options, that is the only time during recruitment that you are guaranteed a bid the next day. The other rounds, we're going to talk about that later. The other rounds, you're not guaranteed an invitation, but on pref night, if you maximize your options, you are guaranteed a bid the next day. So that's what happens with Kylie here. Kylie is above the quota line on alpha, but below on beta. So even though she preferenced beta first, she's below the line, so she didn't match. So she'll match with her second option, alpha, because she's above the quota line for alpha. Perfect. Okay, so Daria is a great example here of another thing that can happen on pref night. So Daria is above the quota line on beta, as we can see, but her second preference is blank. It says NA there. So when Daria comes to sign her MRABA, she comes up to Emily or I, because we're the two people that are going to be doing this. She'll come up to Emily or I and she'll say, I want to turn in my MRABA, and we'll see that only beta is listed. So Emily and I are going to ask, hey, Daria, how many chapters did you go to tonight? And in this case, she's going to say, I went to 2. Now, Daria is she's doing what is called intentionally single preferencing, ISP. Again, I hate saying this out loud, but I feel like we have to do this as an educational piece. You might have heard this called a suicide bid for super obvious reasons. Like, we don't call it that because we're not going to equate that to something that happens during sorority recruitment. That's just not the move here. So if you'll help me in my fight to get people to stop saying suicide bid, that would be amazing. So Daria went to 2 chapters, but she said, I would rather be a beta than be in any sorority at all, which, okay, that's fine. That's her decision, right? She gets to make that decision. The only time during recruitment you get to choose whether you don't want to maximize your options or not is on pref night. So Daria says, I would rather only be in beta. If I don't get matched with beta, I'm happy with not being in a sorority at all. So because Daria is above the beta quota line, she got really lucky. She matched with beta. So that's super exciting. So she is one of those cases where ISPing works out for her. So that's great. Sam is the opposite of Daria. So Sam, you see, is above the quota line on beta. That's great. Honestly, it doesn't matter where Sam is on beta's list. Sam went to 1 chapter on pref night. You see her second preference is empty because she only went to 1 event. Sam's is an easy decision. No matter where she goes, well, to beta, because that's her option. She's maximizing all the options available to her. So Sam could be at the very bottom of beta's list, but she's going to be guaranteed a bid to beta the next day because, like I said, she's maximizing her options, all her options available to her. So she's going to get matched with that chapter because she's guaranteed a bid on bid day if she maximizes her options. Does that make sense? I saw a couple little confused faces. Okay.
Even if she's below that line.
Right. This is so I always use this example as my own sorority experience. On my pref night, I woke up and my row gammas brought me my list and I had 1 chapter on there. So I knew on bid day exactly where I was going to be going because I maximized all the options available to me, my 1 organization on pref night. So when students come to Emily and I in this room, when they sign their MRABA and they only have 1 chapter listed, we ask that question, how many chapters did you go to tonight? And if they say, I went to 1 chapter, it's so cute. We hug them, we do a little dance. If they want to do that, it's like a little screaming thing. It's so cute because we know exactly where they're going to go on bid day. They're going to match because they maximize their options. So those students that only have 1 party on pref, so it's not really a decision at all. I guess the decision is, do I want to be in a sorority or do I not? That's the decision to make. So that's what happens with Sam here. Cool. Okay, so we're going to keep going. There's a couple more examples here. Jess. So again, Jess is, I think she's kind of an easier one. Oh no, so Jess is below the quota line on beta, above on alpha. So we see because she's below the quota line on beta, even though that was her first preference, she doesn't match with beta. She'll match with alpha because again, she maximized her option. So she's going to get a bid. She just doesn't know to which chapter. Something I like to mention here, and the stats are pretty similar from year to year. Whenever your students come to sign their MRABA, last year specifically, 90% of students got their first preference on bid day. So it's like pretty good odds. It just kind of depends on the year, but it's typically between 85 and 90% of students get their first preference. So on our campus, it typically works out. I think it's because students and chapters are really real with each other and they have great conversations. So we always encourage students to really trust their gut on that because that's the best way to do that. Okay, so we talked about Daria earlier, who ISP'd and got lucky because she was above that quota line, so she matched. Emily. Emily's experience is the opposite. So as we can see, Emily is below the quota line on alpha. And Emily went to beta that night. We didn't flesh out this whole list. So Emily's below number 8 on beta's list here. again, Emily's going to come to us. She's going to say, hey, here's my bid card. Here's my MRABA. And it's only going to have one chapter listed. And so we're going to ask her, hey, how many chapters did you go to tonight? And she'll say, I went to 2. And we'll say, okay, there's only one chapter listed on this card. You know that you're not guaranteed a bid tomorrow, right? We ask every student that only has one listed to make sure that they know you're not guaranteed a bid the next day. And that's what happens to Emily here. So she preferences alpha, but she's below the quota line. So she doesn't match. So on bid day, Emily's going to wake up and she's going to get a call from her Roji or myself or Emily, our Emily here on staff around 10 a.m. And we're going to have to tell her that she didn't match with a chapter. So she won't be getting a bid that day. So it stinks. I mean, again, it's an intentional decision that students make. So when students are really struggling with, do I like ISP? Do I not? The question I always ask them is, well, do you want to be in a sorority? Not which sorority do you want to be in? Do you want to be in a sorority or not? And if their answer is yes, then I say, then why would you ISP? It's a risk that you don't know that's going to work out. Because nobody knows where these students fall in this chapter's ranking list. Even if your student's talking to one random member and she's like, oh, we're going to put you number 52 on our bid list. Like that member doesn't know that. Right? Like nobody actually knows where your student's going to end up on this ranked list outside of the chapter's recruitment team, which is like 3 or 4 people. So I always ask students that question. Do you want to be in a sorority or do you not? And if the answer is, I only want to be in this one sorority, then maybe ISPing is the best decision for them. But if their answer is just, I want to be in a sorority, then why would you ISP, right? It doesn't make sense to put yourself at risk like that. So up to the students, it's their decision, but that is what can happen. So we have 2 more examples here quickly. The next is Anya. So we see Anya on Beta's bid list, but there's really no other information because something your student can do is they can come to Jim Thorpe with us and they can withdraw from the process at any time. A lot of times, well, I don't want to say a lot of times, it doesn't happen as much as you might think. Students will decide that this process like isn't for them, which is totally fine. My favorite story is like this one student went to her first party at a chapter and they sing when these doors open. So if your student doesn't know that there's going to be singing, prepare her. We will tell her too, but there's going to be a lot of singing. And this student went to this party, they were singing. She came back to her office and I was like, hey, how was your event? And all she said was, oh, hell no. So, sometimes the singing's like not for them, which is totally fine. So we help those students get engaged other ways on campus, which is fun. So that's something we would do for Anya here. We would remove her from the process and help her find some other way to get connected on campus. And then the last example, as we get through this, is Hallie. So Hallie is what's going to be called a quota addition. So again, there's 2 chapters listed here, right? Hallie went to 2 chapters. She preferenced both. She maximized her options. But if we look at Alpha and Beta's lists, she's below the quota line on both lists. She's below the quota line on both. So you may be like, oh, she's not going to match at all. But she will because she maximized her option. She's guaranteed a bid. So Hallie is what's called a quota addition. So in the middle of the night, like the wee hours of the morning, Emily and I were sitting in Jim Thorpe. We're looking rough. We're manually adding in quota additions to the chapter bid lists to make sure that students who did the process in full good faith, they will be matched with a chapter. So Hallie truthfully could end up in Alpha or Beta, but we always try to look at the student's first preference first. We want to help them join the chapter that they most want to join. So we'll always look at her first preference, but it is possible to end up in your second, but it's a little bit more rare. So that was a lot about bid matching, like a lot. Before we move on, is there any questions in the chat? I'm seeing there's I've missed a ton of stuff in the chat. Sorry. Someone did DM me. They asked if only, so did you say the sorority only ranks on pref night? That's correct. The other nights, it's just a full invitation list. No rankings or anything. But on pref night, it is a ranked list. So that's a good question there. A couple other questions I'm seeing in the chat about this stuff. Do existing members in a house know if an incoming girl is a quota addition? They do not. No one, actually the chapter recruitment officers, like even the chapter president won't know that. The only people who know who the quota additions are Emily Reinhardt and myself and our RFM specialist who like works at a national office, and we don't tell anybody. So it's very secretive. Cause again, it's nobody's business, right? Even your student won't know that she's a quota addition if she is. So that's a real plus. Christy asked, what if she decided not to pledge after getting a bid? So that is an option. I think it's important to note when they sign that MRABA, there's a lot of verbiage on there. So like I talked about, it's a binding agreement, right? So before your student signs that, and we're going to tell them this, but sometimes they listen to you more than they listen to us. Sometimes they don't. When they sign that binding agreement, it is a binding agreement. It's a contract. So your student needs to understand what is on that document. And we're going to have tons of staff around. There's going to be lots of us to answer questions. But if your student signs the MRABA, and if she is matched with a chapter on bid day, if she gets a bid, she can withdraw from the organization, right? Like she can do that, but she's not eligible to join another Panhellenic sorority for a full year. That's part of the National Panhellenic Conference. They've got all these rules and regulations. And one of those rules is something called the Panhellenic Compact. All 26 organizations got together and they said, hey, we don't think it's fair that students can just like hop from organization to organization. We just don't think that's right. So they put this thing in place called the Panhellenic Compact. And that's what happens on bid day. So your student, yes, they can match with the organization and then leave, but they won't be able to join another Panhellenic organization on campus for a year. So that's a great question. Good stuff.
Riley,
Yes.
we have one, you can see it here. What if they do not get an invite on pref night? And that process is that Kylie or myself will be going to the student's dorm, knocking on their door in the mornings of each round if there is that person that is released, and letting them know, hey, this is what has happened. The students, if they are released, they will never be notified they're released by just their row gamma handing them a blank party schedule. That would never happen. So we will notify the students, and then we'll also notify their row gammas so that they can be there and process however they need to with their row gammas that they've been with the entire week. So if that were to happen, and Kylie goes into a little bit more statistics about that, that is how generally that process will go.
Great question. So yeah, so I've got some stats here because this is something parents are always asking me about. And I love that people are data nerds like I am. So we love some stats. So for those who are curious, these numbers are from last fall of 2020. This was our formal recruitment. So we had 1,112 recruitment participants signed up. I think we like have passed that by one person as of today. So woo. So last year, this pie chart represents all 1,112 participants. By the end of the process, when we do this bid matching thing that we just walked through all these scenarios, by the end of that, 953 students were matched with a chapter, and the remaining 160 were unmatched by the end of the process. So you might be like, wait, unmatched, like what does that mean? Don't worry, we have another slide for you. So the unmatched data. So this pie chart is just those 160 people. It's not the full number, just the 160 unmatched. So there are 3 ways that your student can end up being unmatched during recruitment. The first is one that we've already talked about, being an unmatched ISP. That means they intentionally single preferenced on preference night. They were below the quota line and they did not match with a chapter. That happened to 21 students last year. So on bid day, we had to call 21 students and say, so sorry, that risk you took didn't work out this time around. Here's some other ways you can get connected on campus. The plus, because they weren't matched, they are eligible to join the community through what's called continuous open bidding. So I think someone asked in the chat, like what that is. Continuous open bidding is just an informal way to join a Panhellenic sorority. So the whole process we're talking about right now with all these numbers and like ISP and quota and all that stuff's very formalized. That's our formal recruitment process. The informal process is called continuous open bidding. And COB is like, if Emily's in a chapter and she's like, hey, Kylie, you want to go get coffee? And then like gives me a bid while we get coffee. That's COB. About half of our chapters get to do COB. The other half are not eligible for COB. So it just kind of depends on the year, which chapter. But if a student is an unmatched ISP, they are eligible for COB. And when they sign that binding agreement, it's going to say that on there. It's going to list out all the options really clearly for them. Another way that a student can be unmatched at the end of the process is if they withdraw sometime during the process. So withdrawals are people who have intentionally decided to leave. They've intentionally removed themselves from the process. So you'll notice here, of our 160 unmatched from last year, a huge chunk, 83% of those people intentionally took themselves out of the process. Whether they're like that girl who was not about the singing, or maybe they didn't like the one chapter they had left. Maybe they went in only wanting one chapter and limited themselves in their mind. They didn't keep an open mind. Those are all scenarios of how somebody could decide to withdraw from recruitment. Something I'd like to mention here, your student might call you. This happens every year. Your student might call you and, they might be upset. They'll be like, I got cut from every chapter. And parents will call and they not necessarily upset, but they want to know like what happened. And it seems like every time this happens, the student actually has like 3, 4, 5 parties left on their schedule. So they didn't actually get cut from every chapter. They just don't like whatever awesome chapters they might have left. They might be limiting themselves in their mind. So sometimes students like that will decide to withdraw for that reason, which again, it's totally their decision. We're going to support them in whatever their decision is. And the last way that someone could be unmatched during formal recruitment is what Emily just mentioned a minute ago, being a complete release or being released from recruitment. That means that you aren't invited back to the next round. So when the chapters turn in those invitation lists, students who are released from the process aren't listed on any of those invitation lists. So you'll see here, it's 6.9% of that 160 unmatched. It's 11 people last year. So 11 out of 1,112. And that's like 1%. So it looks bigger on this pie chart than it actually is. If we put that into the larger number, it's about 1% of students every year. So if you're a little bit worried about that, it's a fair thing to be worried about. It's hard. I think parents always ask people like Emily and I, they'll be like, hey, is my student going to be guaranteed a chapter? Do you think she'll be okay? It's hard for us to say because we don't really get to make that decision. It's up to the chapters. But typically people who are released from the process, it's normally like a grades issue, like a lower GPA where a chapter wouldn't be able to pledge the student or wouldn't be able to initiate them. Sometimes it's people like students who maybe weren't the nicest in a chapter that they maybe didn't want to go back to. Sometimes we see students get like really frustrated and they might be rude to someone in a chapter. And our Panhellenic community is way smaller than you might think for how big it is in size. So that's another piece of advice you might relay to your students is be kind always. Respect is like the best thing that you can do during recruitment. And the same goes for the chapters. We hope that we've set that expectation that they need to respect all P&Ms as well. But that's a big thing. So I hope this helps kind of explain like the unmatched piece, how a student could be unmatched at the end of the process. And I mentioned COB, that like informal way to join an organization. Last year, I think this data is like really awesome. Last year, oh my gosh, my watch is talking to me. That's embarrassing. He's a British man. Oh my God. I have just done all kinds of embarrassing things on this call today. I need to hang up. So this pie chart is the total people that did recruitment last year, right? 1,112. And this pie chart shows all of the people that were matched by the time the school year was over. So by the end of recruitment, by the end of the academic year, 94% of people who went through recruitment ended up in a chapter. Some of them through formal recruitment, a big chunk of them through formal recruitment, but also a lot of them through that informal continuous open bidding process. So if formal recruitment is not where your student shines, that is okay. If I would have known what chapter I was going to end up in, I would have just done COB, because holy moly, formal recruitment is not where I shined. I showed up in a blazer, y'all. I did not know. People are out here in these like adorable sundresses. I was the mock trial kid in a blazer. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to wear business casual. So oops. But hey, we ended up here and we're great now, right? So there's lots of experiences. Your student is going to have a great experience. I hope. I think the biggest piece of advice that Emily or myself would give, have an open mind. If you go in only wanting 1 or 2 chapters, statistically speaking, those are not great odds. So if we go in knowing all 11 of our organizations are amazing and they provide such great spaces of belonging for students, I think that is the best way to go in. So, those are some big pieces of advice we would give here. I don't think there's a ton left in here. Yeah. So kind of wrapping up, and I think we can answer questions. I know some of these are easier to like unmute and talk out loud. I kind of want to mention these are the 3 big things our student leaders try to do: celebrate, empower, and uplift women. That's what they try to do in everything, including formal recruitment. So again, I mentioned this is a time in your student's life when they're going to have so many people on their team who want to celebrate them, empower them, uplift them. And your students, they got to let people in. We can't read their minds. So if they need something, if they want to talk through something, this is the time to do that. And they just need to come find us. And if they're wondering where to find us, I've mentioned the Jim Thorpe Multicultural Center a couple times. It's located just south of the residence halls. So your student, if they live in the residence halls or if they live in Cross, it's like right in the middle of those things. And that's where we're going to be all week. Emily and I will be camped out. We're going to be hanging out here a lot. And if you all need anything, you can either stop by if you're in the area, or you can give us a call. That's our phone number. That'll be the Panhellenic recruitment line during this recruitment process. So you can always give us a call. I feel like every year we get calls from parents who are like, hey, my student just called. They have this question. I don't know how to answer it. Or maybe a parent calls and they're like, this is my kid's experience. Like, I just need some advice to give them. I don't know how to have this conversation. Those are things that we are happy to help with. So don't ever feel like you're going to be bothering anybody. Like that's our job, is to support you. So please let us know how we can do that. Cool. So I just talked a lot. I need a drink of water, and I've done all kinds of embarrassing things on this phone call. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So if you need to take a little snapshot of that, please do so. And we're going to answer questions that we might have missed in the chat. Is there anything that hasn't been answered that people might want to unmute and ask? This is the time. We're happy to help.
Question about, there was a question about what does snap bid mean? So maybe we just cover that one more time.
Snap bid. I forgot to talk about that.
Oh, so we didn't talk about it.
We didn't. We talked about
Look
it.
at y'all.
We love. So, okay, a snap bid, for those that are like, ooh, what's a snap bid? We actually don't talk about snap bids a lot because on our campus, they're super, super rare. So on some campuses, snap bidding is like a big thing because chapters don't reach quota. But on our campus, a lot of our chapters reach quota. So that's not always an option. So a snap bid is, well, there's 2, I guess the way to describe this, there's 2 numbers that chapters are looking at kind of all year. One of them is one we already talked about, that yellow line on all those slides, the quota line. So like we said, quota is just the total number of MRABAs divided by 11. That's how we set quota. If a chapter doesn't reach their quota, then they can snap bid up to that number on bid day. And snap bidding happens before bids even go out. So that happens in the morning. Again, not super common. On the last like 3 or 4 years, all of our chapters have met quota. So there have been no snap bids. So if your student's like, oh, I'll just like wait for a snap bid, that's a risk that I would not take. The last time we had a snap bid was, I think it was 4 years ago, and we only had 2 the whole time. So not super common. But I talked about two numbers that chapters are looking at. The other one is called campus total. So campus total is set on bid day as well. We take the total number of people in every chapter, including these like new members that get matched on bid day, and we find the median chapter size. So there'll always be 5. So we find the median chapter size, and any chapter that's underneath that median, they get to COB up to median. So that's how we know who gets to COB. So if you're curious about COB or what chapters are eligible for COB, we're happy to share that, but we won't know until bid day because we have to account for all the new members that are matched with the organization. So hopefully that helps kind of explain snap bidding and COB. Holy moly, the chat, I cannot keep up. I see Emily just going to work here answering these questions.
Oh, yeah, we've had a few questions about bid day, about gifts in general. So we saw that video, awesome vendors. There's a link right there that goes right back to our website. So they offer an array of options for you to purchase some gifts for your students. Again, you don't have to. My mom was like, absolutely not. No. So I got some flowers on bid day, but like I said, we were new. We didn't know what this meant. So you can send little gifts here and there through the vendors to that student. Sometimes we get one, they get some every day. They'll be dropping them off. Their real grandmas will come pick them up and then take them to the student. They'll take them to their dorm. You don't have to. Like I said, it's totally optional. And then you have the ability to purchase a gift for bid day. With those bid day gifts, the vendors will go and deliver them straight to the facility. So the student will get there, say, oh, look, this flower, say Emily Reinhardt, love mom. So you don't have to do a single thing. If you want to bring something yourself, then I would. Anything beyond the vendors that we are that are our preferred vendors, anyone outside of that, they do not get the ability to just come here and deliver stuff. That would have to be something special. So hope that cleared some things up.
Nice. I see a couple other questions here. Amy Vu is asking if there's a difference for transfer students. Do chapters have freshman quota versus a sophomore quota? We don't have that on our campus at this time. I'm always happy to share data. I will say we typically have our process is typically about 90 to 92% freshmen. So that doesn't mean that sophomores don't join. Like we have sophomores that join our community every year. We have several of our recruitment guides joined as sophomores. One of our students on Panhellenic Exec this year joined as a sophomore. So it's definitely happens every year. But because 90 to 92% of our people participating in recruitment are freshmen join at higher rates. So I hope that helps answer. We don't have a quota difference right now for freshmen and sophomores. That's not to say that it couldn't happen in the future. If our demographics start to change or something like that. So that's a great question. And then Karen has a question here about how far you can go through the process before withdrawing when you wouldn't be able to be eligible for COB. So all the way through to when they sign that MRABA. If they sign the MRABA and they are matched on bid day, then they're not eligible for COB for a year. So for some students, that's why they decide to ISP. Because when I asked that question of, would you rather be in this chapter or not be in a sorority at all? If the answer to that question is yes, then yeah, they probably should ISP, right? Because if they don't want to be in that chapter and they are matched with that chapter, then they can't drop and join another chapter for a year. They could drop, but they won't be able to join another organization for a while. So if your student wants to ISP, no one on our staff, we train them specifically. No one on our staff will ever say that you can't ISP. It's not recommended because again, it's a risk, but if that's what the student wants to do, that's what they can do. So we're always going to support their decision. Some other questions. Are the Rogamas in a sorority, but they don't tell the girls what chapter they're in? They are in chapters, and on our campus, our recruitment guides are allowed to be affiliated. We found that your students like don't actually care what chapter our row gammas are in, and it doesn't impact their ability to lead and support your students at all. So our Panhellenic community is super tight knit. You'll see people friends with people in all other chapters. That's not uncommon here. So we don't have enough of that rivalry that it really matters in our recruitment guide community. So if your students want to ask their row gammas what chapter they're in, they totally can. That's a great question. Oh, sorry. Gosh, I'm scrolling now. Emily, you already answered that. I'm
Here,
hoping
I'll help too.
Yeah.
Okay, so about what time would presents be delivered? So vendors should be getting their deliveries here at Jim Thorpe in the mornings, because it's just so high demand. Sometimes there's multiple trips, but then we are messaging the row gammas, come pick up presents, come pick up presents, come pick up presents, because sometimes we'll have family members that said, my daughter didn't get her gift, what's going on? That means it's been, it's in process, it's in transit, and then it's up to the row gamma then to get to them. So if they don't get it immediately on that day, it will come. I promise they will.
Mhm. Yeah, the question about can we drop off bid day gifts to us on Sunday? That one's a little bit harder. We can get it to your student, but it might not happen on bid day because we are running like a million directions on bid day. So on actual bid day, the vendors don't bring the gifts to us. They take them straight to the house. So we're not actually involved in that process as much. Because we're trying to organize like 1,000 t-shirts and get them 1,000 t-shirts and bids and get them to your students on time. So I would not suggest bringing that gift to the Panhellenic office on bid day specifically. On all other days, we got you. You can just bring it over. We'll help. Another bid day question. If we come up for bid day, approximately how long will we have with our daughter? Kind of hard to say. I feel like historically it's like, I don't know, maybe an hour because they're
Maybe.
excited, right? Like they want to go hang out with their new friends. So that's why when parents are like, oh, I feel so bad, I can't come to bid day. It's fine. Like they won't get to hang out with you that much anyway. Sometimes it's like a quick picture and then we're on their way. So yeah.
We have a question about how late, what time do most of the rounds end? They will be for round ones, they will be ending around 4:35, around 5 o'clock. Round two, 6:30 p.m. And this is when like the doors close, they are done. 6:45, round three. Preference rounds, so these are more towards the evening. And the last party ends at 8:45.
Mhm. And if your student's looking for like a fuller schedule breakdown, unless they registered for recruitment like today, which we've had a couple people do that today, they can go on, they've been added to this thing called Canvas. That's where all of their classes are housed during the school year. We made a little Panhellenic Canvas where they can go check out the schedule. It's like a resource hub for them. So if they haven't checked out the Canvas page, they should do that. And they can help with that. A couple other questions here. I feel like I missed one up here. Oh, how much does being a legacy impact bids? Truly not as much as you would think. Most of our organizations have eliminated their legacy policies or their preferential treatment toward legacies. So even before that though, on our campus, because we're like a Southern sort of Greek school, a lot of students that go through our process are legacies. So it really doesn't impact the process as much as you might think it would. And then Kristen asks, in this age of COVID, if our daughter isn't feeling well or starts running a fever during recruitment week, what happens? That's a great question. So we would really encourage your student to go get tested if they can. We know that things are really uncertain right now. Like we all know that we're in a public health crisis. We're not going to act like that's not happening. So the last thing we want to do is expose more people, right? So all of our students that may be feeling this way, we have put in contingencies in place. The chapters are ready to pivot to virtual for certain students if they need to. And they're going to get the same information. They're going to have the same conversations. It'll just be like this over Zoom on a one-on-one kind of way. So if that happens, don't stress. You just need to let us know. Let that student can let us know. And then we can get their virtual process set up super easily. We've got a lot of plans for that.
The question, do the girls have to be in their rooms by a certain time for 4 p.m. bid delivery? So
Yeah.
it's kind of in that question. Yeah, be in your room at 4 o'clock. It's definitely easy because I mean, Kylie and I can both remember like you're like counting down the hours till it's time to get that bid, and you can hear them coming down the hall because you hear ah. So definitely have them at the room at 4 o'clock. They will already be there, and our whole hope with it being at 4 o'clock is that they have some time to prepare for the next day, because the next day is the start of college. Make sure, try to encourage like, okay, like, are you looking at your schedule? Do you know where you're going tomorrow? And then they can do all the things at 4 o'clock.
Right.
You do not, I honestly suggest not be in the dorm room with them. You know, it's kind of their time. And it's an easier transition if you wanted to go to the chapter facility, just be downstairs in the dorms lobby, honestly, because you will not know where that student is going. So it just kind of like gets stuck in the chaos, and you'll honestly be kind of around a lot of people running. So for your safety, I would stay kind of like either outside or like in the lobby of the dorms.
Great point. Honestly, you want to watch it happen, y'all. It's the craziest thing you'll ever see in your whole life. I cannot wait for you to experience this. I mean, Emily and I will stand outside this window and watch it happen. And it's great.
Our eyes are just like, and we're just watching females just storm.
Great stuff. Someone asked, I saw that there was a meeting on Pref Day. When will they know which session they're going to? Great question. So this is kind of a COVID-y sort of thing as well. In an effort to eliminate like huge group gatherings indoors, we've kind of amended the schedule a bit. So those mandatory sessions that they have to go to on Pref Day, they've been moved to Zoom. So your student will be able to do that from their dorm room or wherever. They're going to learn about like anti-hazing stuff. They're going to learn about some alcohol related, you know, how to use alcohol safely or not use it, up to your students' discretion. They're going to learn about that. And then they're going to learn about, honestly, the bid matching activity that we just did. They're going to learn about that stuff in that meeting. So we split them up by alphabet. That's in that Canvas class as well. So they can kind of see which session they'll be going to. It's by last name. I think one's at like 10, and I think they start at 10, 11:30 and 1, maybe something like that. So there's a couple different sessions. So yeah, great questions here. And then I saw Emily just answer that last one in the chat about family sessions or family meetings on bid day. Yeah, some chapters will do them. It's normally kind of short. But yeah, it's if you want to get signed up for Parents Club, you might be like, wow, I just ended that. Why would I do that again? Or if you're missing it, you know, you can sign up for the Sorority of Parents Club. And Pref Night begins, I think the party schedules go out at 5, right, Emily?
The party begins at 5 o'clock.
Oh,
Royal Gammas Pickup PNM's party schedules at Jim Thorpe are distributed to wow, y'all. Royal Gammas distribute party schedules on floor at 3:30 p.m. So honestly, if they are just dressed and ready to go for whatever, that's kind of like a good rule of thumb too. Just be dressed and ready once they start delivering any party schedule beyond round 1, just so they may have a break like I did, which was awesome, or they might just need to start heading that way.
cool. These are great questions, everybody.
Yeah.
Is there any other question that we haven't touched on or that you would like us to answer? They don't necessarily need to be dressed and ready by 3:30. Sorry, I'm looking at this one in the chat. They can be if they would like. Some people, they're about that planning. They totally can, but their first party won't start till 5. So if they want to be dressed that early, they totally can. But if they're someone who wants to wait till closer to 4 or 4:15, that's totally fine too. Everything's very walkable here. So don't tell them they're not going to be walking as long as they might think as it looks on a map. It's like the furthest walks, not more than 15 minutes. So they're going to be just fine. Will the oh, sorry.
Trying to help you out so you're not talking so much. Rogue Gammas do not live on campus with them. They are, like we've talked about, they are upperclassmen in chapters right now, and they live off campus. They used to, back when our process looked a little bit different. So in round 2, for the parties all start at 5.
Like rounds 2 through 4. Every day.
Oh, I was
party-
like 2, 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every day parties start at a little bit of a different time. Your student will get her individualized schedule in the morning.
Mhm.
So even though parties start at 10 a.m. on round 3, she might not have her first party until 2 p.m. So that's why when Emily said like be dressed and ready, they might be kind of ready, but they might also have a break for a couple hours. So I caution to say be ready to go in the morning. The
Mhm.
only day your student is going to 100% know her schedule the night before is on round 1. Because they're going, they don't have individualized schedules that day. They're going with a group. Should we park at Lloyd Noble on bid day and then walk to whichever house they receive a bid? Maybe it's kind of a far walk to our North Greek groups. I would suggest parking somewhere. There's a parking garage on Elm Avenue. I would suggest parking there or somewhere on campus.
Mhm.
It's a Sunday, so I don't think they'll be ticketing that day. So I think you can park wherever on campus, as long as it's a legal parking spot, people, legal parking spot. Don't fight me for getting a ticket if you don't park in a legal parking spot. But yeah, so if it's a South Greek house though, feel free to park at Lloyd Noble. That's a great plan, I think. Lots of time. How much time minimum will they have to get ready when they get their schedule? Enough to get dressed. Yeah, they'll have enough time to get dressed. They might not have enough time to like do their hair and makeup though. So if your student's about hair and makeup, I know some students are like, I'm not wearing makeup. Kind of up to the student, but I would suggest Emily's got the master schedule there. Is that with like 45 minutes? Right?
Yeah. So like round 2, here's
Yeah.
an example. Like they get their bids they start to distribute at 8:15. First party begins at 9 a.m. Because they start to distribute at 8:15, the row gammas have sometimes a max of like 36 people in their hall group. So it may take them a little bit to like get over to them. So beyond preference round, my bad, everyone. Just having them kind of like whatever that might be, that first schedule might look like, is always a good option for them. But yeah, 8:15 is when they start to distribute. At 9 a.m. that first door opens.
Perfect.
We have a direct message. Do you split the groups for round 1 to have all parties in North Campus houses one day and then all South Campus the next day?
We do. We get real smart with logistics, people. We love the logistics.
Yeah.
That's what Emily and I do this week. So yeah,
Ooh,
totally.
great question. What if you're late to a party? It's honestly like it's kind of madness, but it's also kind of funny to watch too. But so if say a student oversleeps, whatever, very much caution your student to not do this, because it kind of gets kind of funky throughout the day. But we get reported back that a PNM is missing from the line, and they are sitting there checking the list as they're at the front doors, and say Emily Reinhardt is not here. She was supposed to be on round 2, first party 1, starting at 9 a.m. We are calling that PNM or getting the Rogies and saying, call Emily Reinhardt. She's asleep. She's not here. That person now, since they have missed that party, we will reroute them. And instead of going to Alpha party 1, I'll find a different time in my schedule to go there throughout the next day. So we have a team of row gammas that have like literal burner phones, these flip phones, and they are like sitting there calling chapters, sometimes organizing their schedules and making it happen, because that happens. People get sick, things, life happens, but they will get a new schedule and it gets emailed to them.
Mm-hmm. Great question. I got a DM. If a student withdraws and opts out of COB, can she go through recruitment as a sophomore? Yes, COB is totally optional. So if a student withdraws at any time, she's eligible for COB, or she's eligible to join the next year as a sophomore if she would like. And then this question about my daughter's living at home, not the dorms. It'll take her at least 30 minutes to get there. Will this be taken into account when delivering their schedules? So yes, with a caveat. I want to be totally transparent with everybody. This is the first year we're doing it like this. In the past, our recruitment dates were a lot earlier. So Camp Crimson has changed how we do orientation on campus now. In the past, it wasn't like everyone would move in and then we do Camp Crimson and then recruitment. It was like everyone, Panhellenic would move in, do Panhellenic recruitment, then everyone else will move in and then school would start. So we're going to be figuring it out. What we're going to try to do is have students who live off campus not have that first party so that they have extra time. We're still trying to figure out what that's going to look like exactly, but we are never going to let your student fail in that way. So don't be stressed about that. We're going to make it work out for them. I don't have a ton of information just yet because we're still trying to figure out some of the logistics on that. Because in the past, if your student lived off campus, they would have been assigned a temporary room in the residence halls for recruitment week, and we would all be there together. And so we wouldn't have these problems. So these are just new problems that we're not used to, but we're going to figure it out. You know, it's like a logistics thing that we're going to work through. So Jennifer, we will make sure your student is taken care of. But I don't have a ton of information just yet on what that's going to look like. We're still trying to get some scheduling things figured out.
If you get a bid through COB, are you in the fall pledge class or are you in the spring? If you go through continuous open bidding this semester, you will be within the fall pledge class that just went through the formal recruitment process. Again, if you're in the spring, then you'd be in that spring pledge class, that spring PC. Do many of them go back through as a sophomore if they withdraw? Yeah, or, you know, they have that option again as doing continuous open bidding. So it, you know, kind of the student's preference, you know, if they want to try it again, then they can definitely go back through formal recruitment. Rounds 1 through 3 could start as early as 9 a.m. ? Yes, they can.
Well, I think round 3, the earliest start is 10. I think. It's been a minute since I've looked at the
I know. So yes, let's look. Round 1, 9, round 2, 9, Friday, round 3, 10 a.m. Extra hour.
Cool. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, hey, we just really appreciate you all being here with us. Like I said earlier, we're going to post this recording online. So I'm actually going to stop recording now. But if anybody has